it's Affy, and today I am here to do my January wrap-up. I read 5 books in January, one being a novella, so technically 4.5 books, but we'll just call it 5. It's alright, we'll call it 5. Not gonna talk too much, I'm just gonna hop on in. So the first book I read in January is by Lorraine Heath. This is the 3rd book in the Once Upon a Dukedom series. This is Return of the Duke. And in this book we have Marcus Stanwyck and Esme. Marcus was the heir to a dukedom, but his father was caught plotting an assassination against the Queen, against Queen Victoria. And so his father was tried and hanged, and in the process, their entire family, they lost everything. They lost the dukedom, they lost all their money, all their lands, everything. They were just stripped of everything. And so shortly after their father was hanged, their mother kind of lost her mind and she ended up dying as well. And so they are basically 3 orphans, and Marcus is the oldest. Like I said, he is the heir, and he has been trying for an entire year to find out the truth. He has been trying to find any co-conspirators that his father might have been working with. He figures, if my dad was guilty, then at least the people he worked with should be taken down with him. But at the end of the day, he doesn't believe that his father is guilty. He feels like his father was set up. He has spent an entire year looking and has kind of hit a dead end. And so he decides he's going to go to the one person that he really doesn't want to go to, but he feels like might be the only person that has answers, and her name is Esme. Esme was his father's mistress, so his father had been seeing her for a little bit shortly before he got caught, and Marcus and his siblings do not like Esme because they feel like she ruined their parents' marriage, and he really does not want to see her or speak to her, but he feels like he has no other choice. So he goes to Esme and asks her some questions, and he's very much like attracted to her, but like pissed at himself for being attracted to her. He's there and he's talking to her and he's like disgusted at her and he's disgusted at himself, and they have this short conversation and she's basically like, I can't help you, like I don't have any answers for you. And so he leaves and he's upset. He feels like he hasn't gotten anywhere. But then she hits him up again and she's like, look, I have one piece of information that might be helpful to you. So she gives him the name of somebody, and it leads him to a party, a masquerade party. And at this masquerade party, he sees Esme and he is kind of like, what is she doing here? Like, what is up? This seems kind of suspicious. And so he kind of follows her around the party, and he catches her sneaking around and she's trying to steal some stuff. And so he's like, okay, something is going on with this Esme chick. Like, I need to find out what's up. And so it kind of goes from there. It's a lot of fun, just the aspects of them trying to find the co-conspirators and, figure out who is after the Queen. It's interesting how they're able to, because the book is called Return of the Duke, so obviously he's going to become the Duke again, but I was just like very curious the entire book of like how he's gonna get his dukedom back. Like you would think after everything that happened with his family, there'd be like no chance in hell. He does kind of talk about like what is it that he's going to do with his life now that he is not the thing that he had been trained his entire life to be, which was a duke. It's actually very, very hilarious. There's a scene where he has to pick the Queen up and she is incensed. She's like, no one is supposed to put their hands on a member of the royal family. How dare you touch me? And it is so funny to me, this scene. I was like, yeah, he's gonna get shot. The romance was interesting. I liked it. They definitely had kind of an angsty, like, liking each other but trying not to like each other. Like, she feels like she can't let romance get in the way of what she's doing, and he feels like, you know, he can't like her because of the fact that she was with his father. And I ended up giving it 4 stars. Out of the series, I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it was nice to kind of have the entire storyline about their family kind of wrapped up in a nice little bow. Next book I read is by Kate Bateman. This is the second book in the Ruthless Rival series. This is A Daring Pursuit. And in this book we have Karis and Tristan. And Karis and Tristan's families live next door to one another, but their families despise each other and have for like centuries at this point. But Tristan and Karis have grown up together because their lands are so close to one another, and so they have known each other their entire lives, and they're both secretly in love with one another, but they have this general animosity towards each other because of the fact that their families hate each other. She's very kind of flamboyant and out there, and she definitely makes tongues wag in society, and he finds that annoying about her. He's like, oh my gosh, she's always getting attention for like wearing crazy things or saying crazy things, and like, how dare she be so like interesting. One day they're at a costume ball, I think it is. She's being blackmailed by somebody who she had lost her virginity to, and this man happened to have lost his carriage to Tristan, and so she's waiting for this guy in the carriage, and Tristan shows up and he's like, why are you waiting in this guy's carriage? What's going on? Are you having an affair with this man? Like, what's going on? She finally admits that, you know, this guy took her virginity, but he later finds out that this man has been blackmailing her. Later on in the book, her brother and his wife, which are the characters from the first book in the series, they decide they're going to throw a country stay. They are basically in the same home for like a week, and she propositions him and is basically like, we'll be here for 1 week, so let's just have an affair during this 1 week, and then we can go back to hating each other again after this is all over. They get into some hijinks with this one. The first book in the series had some crazy, wild stuff going down, and this book was no different. There's a bear and a circus, and like I said, there's a guy who is blackmailing her, and everything starts to get a little wild towards the end, but it was still fun. The mutual pining in this one was really good. I love how much they're just like really into each other, but trying so hard like to hide it from one another. Just their inner thoughts about the other person are fun to read. I feel like a lot of the book was from Karis's point of view. I wanted there to be more from his point of view. It just, yeah, because I don't know, it wasn't enough. Like, the majority of the book was from her viewpoint, and I just needed a little bit more of his viewpoint, just to feel like I was really getting a full picture of the story. But these two are fun. They're fun characters. I like their pining, They had good mutual pining. They had good banter. Nothing to complain about. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Like I said, I would have preferred to have a more balanced viewpoint between the two of them, but it was interesting. There were some funny moments, and the end of it definitely got a little wild, but I enjoyed myself, and this has been a fun series so far. So the fourth book I read is by ELisa Braden. This is the second book in the Midnight in Scotland series. This is The Taming of a Highlander. This book is huge. Let's see if I can hold it while I talk. My fingers are gonna fall off. So in this book we have Broderick McPherson and Kate Huxley, and Kate is the brother of John Huxley from the first book, and Broderick is the brother of Annie from the first book. So basically their brother and sister are married to one another. In this book we have Kate, who is very sweet, very very interesting young lady. She's come to Scotland to visit her brother, and she just loves it in Scotland. She thinks it's a wonderful, wonderful place. She's trying to write a book, and she feels that Scotland as a whole is her muse. She loves everything about Scotland, and she keeps trying to write about wolves in her story, and everyone keeps telling her like wolves are not a thing in Scotland. She's like, but how about we just pretend like they are, and you guys can give me ideas of like how one would slay a wolf if there were wolves. She is writing her story one day out. She's just kind of gone out into the hills somewhere, and she's writing, and it starts to get dark, and she decides she's gonna go home, but she gets lost, and she's just walking in circles for a while, and finally she ends up in the woods, and she witnesses a man beating another man in the woods, and she thinks that she has witnessed a murder. She's finally found by her brother, and he takes her home, and she basically tells him, like, I'm pretty sure I just saw a man get murdered in the woods, and she gives him details of what she saw. And her sister-in-law Annie starts to kind of turn a little white, and she's basically like, I think that was my brother. Kate is in town the next day, and she's walking around, and there is a kind of like a cop or an investigator who she bumps into, and this guy is asking questions about whether she's seen and either of these two men, and she realizes he's asking questions about what she had witnessed the night before, and so she starts freaking out, and when she gets home, Broderick is there, and she's freaking out even more because she's like, oh my gosh, this is the guy that had beat that man in the woods. And so she's freaking out a little, and they're trying to discuss like, how are we going to get out of this situation. She comes up with this idea of them marrying, because if they get married, she does not have to speak as a witness to anything that he's done. And so he at first is just like, I don't want to do that. And he's very grumpy. He's scarred. He's been through a lot. And so he's just kind of like, I don't want to be bothered by anyone, by any woman. So he's like, absolutely not. But she kind of forces his hand. And so they get married very, very quickly. And he's like, I don't want you living with me. Like, you can stay at your brother's place. Like, we got married and it's in name only. But then the investigator comes around again, and he's like, I don't understand why you're not living with your husband. Have you guys actually become man and wife for real? Because if you hadn't slept with your husband after getting married, then you could get an annulment because the marriage wasn't consummated. So she realizes they're gonna have to move in together and they're gonna have to sleep together to make this marriage real. And so she shows up with all her stuff and she's like, I gotta move in with you. This is what's gonna happen. And he's just like, oh my God, this woman is making me miserable. But she moves in and she convinces him that, you know, they're going to have to consummate their marriage. And once they consummate their marriage, he starts to kind of ease up a little bit. This book had some really, really sad moments. Broderick had been thrown in jail by someone who hated him. And he had been stuck in jail for like, I think an entire year or something. And it goes through kind of what happened to him while he was in jail. And it's just brutal. Like I felt so bad for this man. The things that he went through. He ended up leaving there scarred and just he went from like this happy-go-lucky guy to just being like a very broody, very spiteful kind of person, and you do really feel for him. This book was a lot. It was like almost 400 pages, so a lot happened, but I really, really enjoyed myself with this one. I think despite being a little bit afraid of him at first, Kate had this very like, she had a little fascination with Broderick where she was just kind of like, he's kind of like the characters I would want to write about in my book. A very strong, strapping, like Scottish man, a Highlander. I like Kate. She's a funny girl. Like she's an interesting character for sure. You kind of feel for her brother because he's just like, how do I keep you in line? Like, you are just so much trouble. Like, she just keeps getting herself in trouble, and her brother is just like, oh my God, it was a horrible idea to let you stay here. Their romance is definitely very, very cute. I would say cute because she's a cute character and she kind of keeps him on his toes, and he by the end of it he's just like, you're such an interesting woman and I'm so lucky to have you. I gave this book 5 stars. I'm pretty sure I gave Annie and John's book, the first book in the story, 5 stars as well. This is just a really good series for me so far, so I really enjoyed this one. So the novella that I read is by Amelie Howard. This is The Wolf of Westmore, and this is part of the same series that has The Beast of Beswick. I don't know the name of the full series itself, but yeah, so this is about Wulfric and Jocelyn, and their families do not like each other. So this is a rival family story. Jocelyn is a bit of a spinster, and she wants to lose her virginity specifically to Wulfric, because she's had a thing for him for years now, and they had like this interesting meet cute, but he doesn't really remember her. It's been a couple years. So she decides she's going to go to his sex club. I don't know if it's for sure a sex club, but it's just one of those kinds of clubs where people get down and dirty. They are doing this fund for charity where you get to buy time with a man, and so she buys his time and is basically like, I want to sleep with you, like I bought you so that we could sleep together. She's got a mask on in this club. Back then as a woman you didn't go to places like this without a mask on. So he doesn't know who he is or who she is, but he's very, very interested. He's like, something about this woman I feel like is familiar, but I can't put my finger on it. They end up having sex in his club. So she is happy she gets to lose her virginity to the man that she wanted to lose her virginity to. And then the next day he sneaks into her father's ball. It's like a costume party, I believe, and he sneaks in as a wolf. Ha ha, Wolfric. He sneaks in as a wolf. He comes across Jocelyn at the party, and he starts to realize that she's the woman that he had slept with at the club. And he's like, holy shit, I slept with my enemy's daughter. Like, this is not good. This is not good at all. And she decides that as a way to get back at her father, who is trying to marry her off to some old geezer, she is going to admit that she slept with Wulfric, which she does in front of everyone at the ball. And Wulfric is basically like, well, shit, I don't have a choice. I have to offer to marry her now. And so her father loses his ever-loving mind. He's like, oh, no, 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 no. You are not marrying my enemy. That is not happening. So it goes from there. This one was definitely entertaining. It was definitely entertaining. It had some interesting twists and turns for such a short book. I didn't love it. It was just kind of interesting. I remember feeling like maybe it should have been a full-length book just because they fell for each other so quickly, like very quickly. And I know with it being a novella, like that's gonna happen, but it was too quickly for my taste. So that was one issue I had with it. I really had wanted to see more scenes between the two families, like read more about kind of why the two families hated each other so much. I just wanted more in the book in general. So if this would have been full length, I think I would have gotten more out of it. But I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. So still liked it, but it just wasn't like super amazing. It was just okay. I don't remember liking this series that much. I don't remember what I gave Beast of Beswick and the other book in the series, which I cannot remember the name of. But I remember not being in love with the Beast of Beswick. And the second book I felt was too... there was too much horniness going on and not enough romance. So that was my issue with the second book. So this one was just okay as well. So I think this series as a whole for me is just kind of like a 3-star, 3.5 star. It's not the best in my opinion, but I still think it was entertaining. It was still an entertaining book. So there's that. But yeah, 3.5 stars on this one. So the last book I read in January is by Evangeline Collins. This is the second book she had ever written, and this is called Her Ladyship's Companion. In this book we have Gideon and Lady Isabella. Isabella has a French cousin who is in town visiting her, and she points out that Isabella seems very depressed, very dejected, just kind of lonely. Isabella was married off very quickly by her brother when she got caught with someone she should not have been with. Her brother was like, I gotta get you married off because who knows, you probably won't be able to marry anybody worthy. So he rushed to marry her off to an older man who it turns out had ED and just wasn't a good person in general. So this man placed her in this home in Scotland and just kind of disappeared. And so she's been alone by herself for 5 years. This man will show up every once in a while and then disappear again. And so she's been lonely and by herself for 5 years. And her cousin finally points out, like, you need male attention, you need male company. I'm going to hire somebody to come out and spend time with you. And she's like, no, please don't do that. Like, I got in trouble for being a hussy like years ago. That's what landed me in this situation. I don't want to I don't want to push the boundaries of what I'm allowed to do. But her cousin decides to hire somebody anyway, and in comes Gideon. He is a male prostitute who gets hired out to be with women, and he gets picked to go to Scotland and meet Isabella. And at first she's very, very nervous about all of this. She's still a virgin because, like I said, her husband has ED, and so she's been married for 5 years and is still a virgin. Gideon is there for 2 weeks, and he gives her all the time in the world to kind of get used to him. And then when they finally do sleep together and he realizes she's a virgin, he actually feels kind of bad about it. He's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize, and if I'd have known, would I have gone through with it? And, you know, he just feels like I'm not the right person for somebody to be losing their virginity to, like, because of who I am. So he feels really bad about that. She starts to fall for him. Again, she's very lonely. She doesn't have anybody, and she's finally got a man that's giving her attention, and so she starts to fall for him pretty quickly. And then the 2 weeks is up and he leaves. And she very quickly realizes that she doesn't want to be alone, and so she herself hires him a second time for another 2 weeks, and it kind of goes on from there. This one was a lot of sex scenes. This one was just non-stop sex. Like, the entire book was just them screwing. A couple scenes here and there with other people, but it's mostly just them spending time together, them pounding all the damn time, and or hunching, as as some people call it, hunching. I like that term, hunching. But there's a lot of hunching going on in this book, and at a certain point I actually was just like, okay, I need them to do something else, just anything else. Like, it's a lot. It's like, we get it. But once everything kind of starts to heat up and her husband comes into the picture, things start to get really serious. And yeah, there's some pretty fucked up scenes in this book. Her husband is verbally and physically abusive, and that part was hard to read. It's an interesting story. It's outside of all the hunching, there's some interesting aspects to the story, and I did enjoy it. It was interesting. The husband had placed her in this house in Scotland, and it was just her and the staff there, and I just kept thinking to myself, like, gosh, I hope this staff doesn't, like, write to her husband and tell her husband, like, your wife has some random man showing up and you know, boinking her socks off, you know. Like, I was worried of, like, what her staff would do, because they didn't like Gideon. They really, really did not like him, and I think there was a lot of judgment at her for what she was doing. This was the only companionship, like it says, her companion, that she had. And so, you know, I was like, I understand the staff, like, being irritated that there's some random man in the house, but, like, she's finally happy for once. This one was good. I didn't love it as much as the first book I read by her, which was 7 Nights to Forever. It was still good, but like I said, it was just a lot of boinking, a lot of hunching, a lot of banging, a lot of, like, just a lot. And at a certain point, it's like, okay, it's too much. I still did get the feeling of there was still the romance. The romance was still there, and you could still feel that love growing between the two of them. He tries really hard to kind of keep from having feelings for her, but it just, he's not able to. He starts to realize, like, okay, I've never felt this way for anyone before, and it's not a good thing. And he's really trying to keep himself from having any further feelings for her. But the more time he spends with her, the harder it is for him to kind of keep that professional distance from her. I liked it. I got bored by all the sex, but I liked it. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and yeah, it was still good. It was still good. It wasn't as good as the first one. I know a lot of people who have read this book really liked it. And like I said, it is good, but it just needed a little less sex and a little more something else, anything else. So January was a good reading month for me. I wouldn't say it was as great as like December. Like, I had a lot of 5 stars in December. So this last month was mostly 4 stars, which is still good. If you've read any of these books and you want to chat about them, leave me some comments in the comment section. And if you don't know what to comment, but you've made it to the end of the video and you just want to show that you made it, go ahead and leave me a glove emoji. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.